Welcome back, everybody. I'm Tommy McCarthy, and this is Let's Talk Cyber. Well, I am delighted to get this young man in front of me on the camera today. I know him now as a friend, an extremely professional individual working in a very fast-paced cybersecurity industry. Welcome to Let's Talk Cyber. It's great to have you on again, Vijay.
Thanks, Thomas. It's good to be here. And it's been a really amazing journey.
It certainly has, Vijay. Before we go into today's really exciting conversation, and more importantly, the subject is very pertinent right now. We're going to talk a little bit about AI governance, but within enterprise organizations. We're going to look at some trends, but we're also going to look at some challenges, because with every great new technology, there always comes both trends and challenges. Before we do that, we're going to look at what this episode is going to dig deep into, Vijay, is how enterprises are moving from ad hoc AI usage to structured risk-aware governance, because that's the important thing, Vijay, that I think a lot of people forget. It's the governance around the introduction and management of AI. But why are they getting real controls without killing innovation is still quite hard. So, we're going to look a little bit into that detail. But before we do, Vijay, please tell us a little bit about yourself. You've been in Dubai for quite some time. You're now at the Ministry of Energy. Where have you come from? What are you doing now?
Yeah, so thanks for having me on this podcast, Thomas. And currently, I'm heading the governance, risk management, and compliance for the Ministry of Energy and Infrastructure here at the UAE. I head the policy development, risk management, compliance activities and function of the ministry. Before this, I was heading the governance, risk management, and compliance for the Smart Dubai platform, for their big data platform. I have about 25 years of experience across the technology industry, the last 19 years of which have been on cybersecurity. Worked pretty much in various domains within cyber security operations, security monitoring, incident response, and recently risk management and governance. So that's been my focus areas.
Vijay, 25 years in this industry, my goodness, that is a lifetime, Vijay. And I'm sure you've seen a lot of new technologies come and go, but I think it's fair to say AI is around for quite some time, Vijay, and it's on that subject. I really want to dig deep and understand a lot more about governance, because I think this is where a lot of organizations are getting it wrong. So I want to look at shadow AI to formal governance, Vijay. AI has spread, as you know, informally with tools that people are using, pilots, SaaS features, but enterprise organizations are now creating formal policies, which is a good step in the right direction. AI inventories, registers, cross-functional AI steering committees to regain control and meet regulatory board expectations. That sounds all great, Vijay, in principle, but what's the reality? What's the practical direction that this kind of formal shadow AI governance is following? Can you expand a little bit on that for me?
Yeah. So if you take a step back and look at organizations, let's say 10 years ago, it was all about digital transformation. That's how I see this whole really massive and rapid transformation that came across enterprises, public and private. It was actually, initially, it was just the digital transformation where organizations realized that in order to be competitive, they had to be web-based, they had to be mobile device-based, they had to have this agility to take decisions and enable their customers to interact with them. That's how it all started back in 2015, maybe 2014. That's how it started. Then we came across this concept of big data, data science, and that's where machine language as well, that's when it started. This flavor of AI, it has existed for quite some time, because machine language learning actually started around that time as well. Then we have the COVID pandemic around the 2020 that created a massive change in the game. So we have a huge focus from office-based workforce to remote or hybrid workforce that in turn produced a tremendous amount of stress and change for enterprises, because they have to adopt and adapt new ways of working, new ways of allowing their employees to add value no matter where they are. And then the big thing happened, the AI, right? AI, a good 4-5 years ago when AI burst onto the scene, it's been really a massive change in the way that organizations do things. Not even organizations, even the way that people live lives as well, in the way that productivity is enhanced by someone who utilizes AI properly. So initially it was all ad hoc. Even till a couple of years ago, it was all ad hoc. So different departments of the enterprise, they came across what promised to be a use case, and they adopted it without having to go through the entire governance process. And this is how it has been for the last few years. But a year and a half, I would say, we have moved from that phase to a more structured AI governance. So organizations are talking about having a clear AI governance framework in place, and that includes your AI governance or AI usage policy, responsible, ethical use of AI. It also includes the steering committee that is required, AI governance committee, AI steering committee that actually is a high-level body that drives the adoption of safe and ethical use of AI in the enterprise. And not the least, they also have a list of AI inventory, which helps them to be on top of what are the different AI use cases in use in the organization and how each of those use cases evolve over time. So we have clear move from shadow AI to formal AI governance the last couple of years. And this is where different organizations are at different levels of maturity. That's what we observe. Whereas some
For sure.
organizations are more structured, they have a well defined, well structured AI governance committee, which takes the decisions and which has clear criteria for acceptable and unacceptable use of AI, whereas other organizations are still trying to catch up.
Vijay, there's no question that, and I say this a lot to people actually when I talk now a lot more about AI and AI governance. Certainly within the UAE, there's no doubt in my mind that you guys are setting the bar at quite a high level. You're taking serious control over AI governance because obviously you know the impact, no control over AI could have on any organization. So on that note, I want to move into from model-centric risk-centric governance. The focus has been shifting from model accurate to what risk does an AI use cases. Can you just tell us a little bit from your own point of view about model-centric, risk-centric governance and explain it in a bit more detail what that entails?
Yeah, so in model-centric AI governance, the enterprise is focused on the model itself and the specific AI use case, whereas they do not have a good hang of how the overall risk scenario in terms of the organization using that AI system or AI use case pans out. So here, you could say that it is more of a narrow focus approach to AI governance in terms of focusing on the model itself, not just all the other surrounding areas and related activities and processes, to a more focused, more holistic approach, which is actually the risk-centric approach, wherein the organization asks the right questions. Okay, the model is successful, the return on investment is good. In terms of value, the organization is getting tangible, measurable value. It's all good. But how much risk do we have? How much risk do we have to expose ourselves to in terms of utilizing the advantages of this AI use case, right?
Yeah.
That's where things like being responsible, being ethical, being respectful of the privacy of individuals' information or privacy data involved in the system. What kind of training did the model go through? And all that entire list of areas are addressed in risk-centric approach. And this is the more matured approach that we see organizations which are higher up at the spectrum, they are adopting.
Yeah, Vijay, and it's really important as well. You touched on something about the benefits and the values to the business around the implementation of AI. So it's really important. I'm going to come back to that. But from bolting on to embedded governance, I guess we need to understand a bit more about, instead of a separate parallel AI process, governance is now being embedded into existing mechanisms. Vijay, we're seeing it, we're hearing it. It's to protect. Project change management is something that's really getting a benefit. Third-party risk, data governance. Security, privacy by design is something that's really stressed upon in so many different governance standards. This makes AI governance more scalable and less of a blocker to businesses. The major changes in AI governance, what are they, Vijay? What are you seeing as the major changes in AI governance?
Yeah, as you have seen over the years with cybersecurity, we had gone through the same maturity journey. So we have a system that is being implemented, and we used to see how just before going live, the security department would get approached with a request to approve, not having much idea about the system itself. So that was more of an approach where security was an afterthought just before go live. The security approval was a good checkbox to tick just so that everybody is happy. But then we moved in terms of cybersecurity, we moved from security bolt on to security by design or secure by design approach. That's the right way, wherein security professionals are involved right from day zero. Even as the system is being reviewed, to be able to contribute with the kind of risk that might be exposed, that the organization might be exposed if the system were to go live. And then from that point in time, data governance, data protection, encryption, privacy, all those other areas of cybersecurity are being addressed from day zero. Well, when it comes to AI governance as well, organizations have gone through a similar journey. Most of the matured organizations, now they're talking about not just secure by design, but ethical by design, or even responsible by design. So right from day zero, even as the model is about to be trained on a set of data, the governance function of the organization gets involved in terms of ensuring that the data itself was responsibly sourced. It did not result in violation of privacy information, that any individual's data which are used in the model training itself has undergone the process of approval by the concerned subject in terms of using their data to train the model. So it's a whole list of questions to ask, and various different ways of looking at AI governance. And that's where organizations are transitioning, that we see in the industry.
And so, what stands out there is visibility. As visibility of your inventory. There's no question to me that most organizations don't have a reliable map of where their AI is used, more importantly, including AI hidden inside vendor tools. You talked about testing tools, making sure, that the compliance. Without an AI style inventory and governance remains quite reactive as opposed to and incomplete, I should say. So how are we going to monitor the visibility and inventory of AI tools that are being used, Vijay?
So when it comes to AI governance or even cybersecurity governance, I would say inventory is the number one critical factor in ensuring the success of the initiative. If you look at any of the standards, including ISO 27001, 42001, 22301, ISO IEC 443, every single standard starts with asset management or inventory as the first section. And that is, it's not a coincidence, because for any governance initiative to be successful, you need to have a clear visibility into what you already have. And with AI governance and AI visibility, AI monitoring, it's easier said than done, because it's even more complicated than the traditional IT or IS systems. Because here we are talking about not just actual system, hardware, software, and the data. Here we are actually talking about also the processes in terms of training the model. So it's much more complicated and complex than a traditional IT system. And that's where we monitor and being on top of the list of components of an AI system, because a well-designed complex AI system could use data from 30 different sources. The model might be trained in different ways and at different layers. So to be able to have a look at all these layers and all the components which are used by the model, and to make sure that each of those models are secure, they respect people's private PII data, they respect ethics, and all those other considerations is so important. That's where it is so important to have a really complex and well-organized AI CMDB. I would go as far as to say that organizations who take the CMDB approach, where you have a system which gets broken down into layers and components. Each component or layer itself has other subcomponents and parts that all come together to make the system. So the CMDB approach to AI is what more organizations are moving towards.
Yeah, and you touched on a lot of the different standards and compliance standards that organizations need to refer back to. ISO 27001, all the different risk-based standards, the new AI standard. These are obviously going to definitely help organizations control people's access to data, understand more about their obligations around the use of AI. So I want to touch a little bit on roles and ownership and decision rights when you're looking at AI, because AI right now is touching IT, it's touching data, it's touching security, legal, risk, business units. So ownership is often unclear in a lot of respects, Vijay, when you start trying to pick this apart. Lack of defined, or ACIs, I should say, who approves what, who is accountable, who signs off on explainability. There's so many things to consider. This all leads to, in some cases, will lead to stalled projects and governance bypass, because at the end of the day, Vijay, if you're uncertain, you'll try and find a workaround. How on earth do you unpick roles and ownership in the decision rights use of AI? How do you expect to control that?
Yeah, so this is where again, we notice that the AI system is more complex than the traditional IT system. I say traditional because prior to AI, you had a system, you had data that the system uses, you had a set of users, but thankfully you had one ownership where the business unit that actually utilized that application would be the rightful owner. And so you had the concept of business owner, system owner. So the business owner from the business side, the system owner from the IT side, and then you have database administrators, analysts, and of course, cybersecurity. So you have, a reasonable framework within which to assign roles and responsibilities. Whereas with an AI system, things get more complex. You have an ecosystem of vendors to start with. You have data that is not just owned by the organization, but actually it may be owned by several individuals depending on the model and depending on the training that the model went through. And then you have a business which utilizes it. There is also the IT that deploys it and manages it, patches it. So all these different stakeholders have their own roles and responsibilities within an AI system. And that's where
Yeah,
it becomes important to break down the layers because it's so common. I've seen organizations go through this dilemma. If it's a high tech AI system, obviously IT owns it, right? Or if the business paid for it, then it's the business's responsibility to make sure it is responsible. It doesn't have to be. There is also the AI steering committee, the highest level of body within the organization that oversees the implementation and adoption of AI. So the good practice would actually have to be to break down the roles and responsibilities and to assign clear roles and responsibilities. In some cases, there might be a primary responsible department, secondary responsible department, because many of these responsibilities are also shared. That makes it even more complex to manage. But organizations that take the time and the resources, they spend the resources to break down the RACI chart, making sure that every single role and responsibility is documented at a very high level of granularity. They do a better job of handling the AI governance framework, building the AI governance framework and implementing it across the life of the AI system.
yeah, and Vijay, what that spells out to me is balancing control with the innovation that you're using. There's no question of what you've just explained there is all about balancing the control and getting it right. Because too much control, as we both know, kills experimentation for the start. You put controls in place, it restricts people. People then start looking for workarounds. And that's what drives shadow AI in a lot of respects. So too little exposes the enterprise to regulatory, ethical, and security risks. So if there's too much control around compliance, it's going to impede the business. Then the answer in tier controls fast. There's got to be fast and low friction paths, low risk use and stricter oversight for high use of cyber risk around AI. I guess what I'm trying to understand is how do we balance this, Vijay, to make sure that we're not constraining people from using AI, but we're still monitoring and making sure that they are following some sort of good ethical compliance standard. How do we get the balance right?
Yeah, if you look at the EU AI Act, it strives to actually achieve that balance between governance and innovation. As you mentioned rightly, innovation should not be the price that governance extracts from organizations. So it really comes down to what are the risk factors? What is risk exposure of an organization? Are we talking about a mere business impact, or is it going to be a societal impact? Is it going to be an impact in terms of privacy of individuals? Are we talking about people's health? Are we talking about people's social spending? Are we talking about selecting candidates for a job? So all these things come into play, and the more it impacts the AI system is likely to impact the individual. Whether it is performance on the job. I've been told that many organizations use AI to grade their employees in terms of their performance. And then based on their performance, they could have a set of conditions with which they evaluate who are their top performers. So such use cases are very sensitive. So the more sensitive, the more the AI system has a repercussion on individuals' performance, whether it is on the job or whether it is individuals being selected for a job or even health. That's another big, massive use case where the AI system has a say on a decision related to people's health. So the more it impacts the people's health or their performance, the more we need to be concern. We need to be focused on AI governance. And that's where, to be able to actually have a look at the bigger picture, not just the model performance, not just the business return, not just securing it from cyber attacks, but even more important is making sure that we are responsible and that AI systems are things like explainability are so important and considered.
Yeah. Well, Vijay, and interestingly, you talked a little bit about how AI is being used to assess people, to monitor their performances. At some point in the whole chain, life cycle and chain, there has to be some human intervention. But obviously, we need to embrace the fact that AI is there to benefit us. If we control it properly, if we monitor the compliance and the use, I think we're onto a winner with AI. Vijay, we're almost there. I really appreciate your patience and the great information you shared on with us. So I guess the last thing for me is, technical depth, explainability around robustness in that life cycle. Governance bodies often lack the technical skills and tools to evaluate explainability bias, adversarial risks, and the model drift. Could you give us a little bit of your own views and opinions about the technical depth and explainability around robustness? I think that's quite important because it really will complete this whole conversation.
Absolutely. And when we say explainability, there is a certain amount of accountability that is placed on the AI system in terms of decisions that were taken by the AI system to be traced back to a set of data inputs. So that's what we are talking about here. Imagine, let's say a candidate was suggested by the AI system among 100 candidates who applied for a job, and each candidate gets assigned a specific score. So at the end of the day, 6 months from now, the AI system should be able to go back and present us with a list of criteria that led to that score. And that's easier said than done. And it's a highly technical area. In fact, this is one of those fascinating areas that has technology, data privacy, machine learning, even programming, and all that list of specialist areas converge into one particular thing called explainability. And we talked about how it's a technical area, but then a governance body like the AI steering committee is expected to understand and hold the AI system accountable and the people who implement it accountable for explainability. And that's why I feel that as we move forward, we are going to have regulations which mandate that every AI governance committee, or even at the board level, you have someone who understands the technicality and the technology of an AI system. That's where we are heading towards. Because without that, a person or a team that understands that at the highest levels of governance, we are going to have a scenario where the governance expertise is not supported by technology or technical expertise. And so there is a gap.
Yeah. Vijay, the interesting thing is, most leaders in organizations are too busy on the day-to-day running of the business. But I think with the rapid expansion that we're seeing across all industries with the use of AI, I think there's going to be a requirement for leaders to better understand, the impact that AI is having, the effective impact AI can have on their organizations, but more importantly, how do they control that? So I think there's no question there's going to be a need, Vijay, for education for leaders to better understand how their teams and organizations are using AI, how they're controlling it, how they're managing it, ethically, how it's being used in the workplace for all the right reasons. More importantly, be aware of the pitfalls. So there's no question in my eyes. I mean, what you've talked about today has been so comprehensive. I wish we had more time to talk, but unfortunately, like most things in life, we need to get on. Vijay, we will follow this conversation on to the next episode, no question about it. For now, I'd just like to say thank you, Vijay Velayutham, for joining me today on Let's Talk Cyber. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Thomas. It was so amazing interacting with you and looking forward to the next episode.